life is just such a beautiful journey of just like picking up pieces of different parts of yourself and figuring out, what do I want to lean into and what do I want to let go of, and like constantly letting those pieces move and flow.
Everybody's learning. Everybody's growing. Everybody's got to start somewhere. How the wise one grows. How the wise one grows.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to How the Wise One Grows. Before I say anything else, we're going to take a moment to land and breathe together because I really could use that right now. So wherever you are, let's take a moment to just notice your surroundings. If it feels safe, you can gently rest your eyes. Feel where your body touches the earth. Let your shoulders drop down the back. Bring your right hand to your heart, your left hand to your belly. Inhale, fill your chest, fill your belly with air. And exhale, open your mouth, let it all out. Let's take 2 more breaths like this. Inhale, chest and belly expand. Exhale, open your mouth, let it all go. One more inhale. And exhale. Return to the sensation of where your body touches the earth. Know that you are held here. And then you can slowly open your eyes as you return to this space. I feel so much better now.
Me too.
I had to redo that intro a number of times because I just kept getting excited and nervous and all of the things. So that's like my little reminder to me. Let's land, let's breathe. So today we are in Crozet with one of my favorite people and someone who I have admired for so many years of my life, Kelsey Fatsi.
Hello.
Yay.
I'm so happy you're here.
I'm so excited to be here. Kelsey's home, I'm sure we'll talk about during this, but I got to come up to her beautiful house in Crozet. They have a gorgeous backyard with chickens, tons of animals. The house is purple and just covered with art inside and out, and it's just such an embodiment of who Kelsey is. And it's so intentional in that, which is one of the many reasons I'm excited to hold space for her to share with you all today. So I'm going to share just a little bit about her, and then we're going to just hang out together. Kelsey Fatsi is a person who loves connection, mindfulness, playfulness, and intention. Her identity is ever shifting, but most prominent are her roles as a mother, a partner, a transpersonal art therapist, an artist, and an aspiring doula. She also works on the leadership team at a local preschool as the emotional, social, and behavioral advisor to support integrating mental health into early childhood. Her home is filled with color and love, as well as 2 grown-ups, 3 strong girls, 2 dogs, 2 cats, 14 chickens, and a turtle.
Poor turtle. He's so lonely.
I did not know about the turtle, and when I read your bio, I died.
Yes, it was a gift, and he used to have a friend who was living with him, but that friend went on an adventure one day. I never did.
And the turtle is still an adventure.
Yes,
right?
yes.
Well, thank you so much for welcoming me into your home, and so many into your home. I think Kelsey has a really cool account. Is it called Our Purple House?
It is.
On Instagram. You should follow it. And she shares all of the art sprinkled in throughout her home. So like coming up here today, I was like, I feel so much like I know it already. And it feels so good to like be in the warmth and have that felt experience of it too.
Oh, I'm so glad. I'm always curious about people who come to see our house, like my good friends, because we just moved here a couple years ago. And a lot of people have seen pictures of it, but I'm like, does it feel the same? You know, sometimes you go to a place that you've seen pictures of and it feels like, oh, this is different. But
I
don't
mean,
know.
it's
What do you
different, but it feels like warmer. Like I think seeing it all together, it's like, oh, like I feel you more in it.
It's like, this is a home.
Mm-hmm. And you
Instead of
get
just-
the energy of it.
Yeah.
Like all the little details, I feel like there's no way. Well, I mean, I'm sure there's a way, but like getting all of the details, something gets lost in the social media land.
It's true. Your sister, actually, Jada, my best friend, she has told me before, like, you should have an art show at your house.
You
of just,
should,
like,
Kelsey.
things that are already at your house and just put little labels like, this was made by this person, or this I got when I went on this trip.
That is such a good idea. Good job, Jada.
Yeah.
Well, I am so excited to talk to you today for a lot of reasons. Like, one being, I feel like you're one of the first people who really taught me like how to take care of myself. I remember having a conversation with you about that years ago, of like how self-care can look like a lot of different things and be so many things. And I think something I really relate to you on, and I imagine I'm not alone in this, is like how you're not one thing. Like there are so many parts of you that weave into the wonderful like spirit and human that you are, and how you navigate that and aren't like, how you don't deplete from that, and like how you find balance and a way to integrate and also like hold space and boundaries as you weave through it all.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's like such a key part of it, is that like, yeah, constantly reflecting and checking in and making sure that I have boundaries around things. Because your instinct is just like, I want to do all this stuff. And then you're just like totally burnt out. So I'm glad we're going to get to talk about that.
I guess, do you mind like just starting with a bit about your background and maybe how you found all these parts of yourself and how the relationship with those things have unfolded, like maybe times when you did feel burnt out and how you were able to notice that and shift, or just where things are at for you now?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. I feel like life is just such a beautiful journey of just like picking up pieces of different parts of yourself and figuring out, what do I want to lean into and what do I want to let go of, and like constantly letting those pieces move and flow. So I've always been into a lot of stuff, and in college it was like overwhelming because I was like, oh my God, I have to pick one major.
Yeah.
Like, are you kidding me? I switched my majors like 6 or 7 times and I just kept coming back to like, what? Yeah, I finally made the choice. What do I find the most joy in, even though I like all of these things? So yeah, that's where the art and psychotherapy came in. I majored in art, minored in psych, and had no idea about art therapy when I decided on that.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's like one piece. Another piece is like a lot of things I like to do have this common theme of just like care and connection and community and curiosity, like learning and being interested in growth. And so I think that makes it a little easier to find a weaving of them all. But yeah, so I kind of I feel like my early life was like sprinkled with just trying a lot of things that I was sort of interested in, trying things that I thought I would like and then didn't. College, I like landed finally, like my second semester, senior year, like, okay, art and psych, that's what I'm going to do. And then I think once you lean in, like this has been my experience, once I leaned into like, okay, let's reflect and think about like what brings me joy and what makes me feel full, the world kind of starts like opening up for you. Like these signs start happening. And I am like a big believer in just like, I don't know, the universe, the gods, the whatever want you to succeed and like learn and grow. And so when I love finding 4-leaf clovers.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I find one, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is a sign that things are going in the right direction. Or anytime I have deja vu, I'm like, oh, for me, it feels like, oh, this is a sign that like things are meant to be. I think I like put, a lot of intention
Mm-hmm.
and reflection into my day today.
Yeah.
And so it makes sense that my life now has become this culmination of like all these different things that have brought me joy throughout my life, because I just continuously reflect and review and think about like, does this feel right for me now? Can I let go of this? And kind of,
Yeah.
figure it out from there.
How do you let go of things when it's not feeling right anymore?
Yeah, that is the hardest
Yeah.
part, I think. Especially things that have kind of been sticking around for a while,
Mhm.
since I was younger. And it did feel like a big, strong part of like, this is me.
Yeah.
I wish I'm just like, of course, totally blanking right now, but it feels so like spot on, that feeling of like, oh, I need to.
This is
to shift.
time. Yeah.
And in those moments, it's really about just like trusting your intuition for me, and knowing like, and also letting go of that external pressure. Because
Yeah.
a lot of times, like being anxious about like, what are people going to think about this, or being critical of like, is this like would anybody else make this choice? Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
But like, just because someone else doesn't make it doesn't mean that I can't, I guess,
Yeah. Well, I really personally appreciate the like landing into your intuition and kind of setting aside like what anyone else is gonna think in that, and like that voice of criticism, because I'm a big people pleaser, and I feel like I've made a lot of decisions based off of like what other people would approve or think, and like, oh, if they think it's good, then maybe it's right. But I feel like I'm in a wave where I'm like, okay, we're not doing that anymore. And to like land into like the what's bringing me joy. Maybe it doesn't like make all the sense right now. Maybe I can't explain it to you. Maybe someone who like loves me is really confused about it. But stepping into that and kind of like mourning the things you're letting go of in that too.
Yeah.
Like that's been a part of the process for me.
Yeah, for sure. And also knowing like, if you let something go, like I guess a good example of this right now for me is ceramics. Like, I love ceramics so much, and for so long, that's what I majored in college, and for so long I couldn't really do it because I started having babies, and there's not like, clay isn't as easily accessible
It's
as like
not the most
watercolors
accessible
or-
at all.
Yes. Yeah. So I like shifted my art for a little bit. And then I circled back around to clay about a year ago, and it was so fun to dive in. And I was like, oh my gosh, there's an opening for this now again. But recently I've felt like, oh, it's too hard to get to the studio with like these other things that I'm prioritizing. So having to let that go again, but also trusting like one day it's going to come back.
I feel very similar in my relationship with ceramics as well.
Yeah.
Because it's one of those things, it's like there's so much joy and passion there, and it's not always at the fingertips, but I like how you land on like, right now I'm leaning into this thing, and like this is what's right for right now, and like that will come back. That's like it reminds me of like my relationship with the yoga practice too. Like it's always changing. Like the amount that I'm on the mat, or like whatever it looks like, it's still a part of your life, and just the way it's unfolding in the day to day can change.
Yeah, for sure. I can relate to that in so many ways.
Yeah. So how did you, I guess you like shed light on like how you started to honor all of the parts of yourself. How do you manage that in your day to day right now? What does that look like for you?
Yeah, I feel like I went through phases, and yoga was such a good example where I just dug into something. And honestly, I think I needed to do that, like dig into ceramics for a long time, and dig into yoga for a long time, like do the teacher training, teach yoga. And honestly, it's sort of been the same in my experience for all my little pieces so far. Like when I became a new mom, I dug into that for a while and just like stayed home. And that's exactly what I wanted to be doing right then.
Yeah.
I just started a couple years ago getting back into art therapy again. And like I dove really hard in. And then recently I've been like, okay, how can I do a little bit of all of this? Like, I can't really just stop doing mother stuff.
Yeah, that one doesn't go away.
Yes. So I feel like, these early parts of my life where I was just like trying things and really digging in. And, that's what that phase of life is about, teenager and 20s is like, who am I actually? Like what pieces feel really good and aligned. And then I feel like I've kind of started shifting into this new phase of like, I like all of these things. So how can I really set boundaries around my time mostly to be able to flow back and forth between them? So my day-to-day now changes every day, of course. But even in my day-to-day, I'm constantly like making choices. So I'll like wake up. I like to wake up before the girls, which, oh my God, I have always been a late person. Like I love going to bed really late and sleeping in, and that has had to shift. So now I get up early, which I have now come to love, but I never thought I would be saying that. So I'll wake up at like 5:30 and then decide like, okay, what feels good for me today? Like, do I want to go for a little run? Do I want to just meditate and drink some tea and like listen to the birds? Do I want to do a little yoga? So starting the day like off like that is really supportive for kind of like touching in on some self time.
Yeah.
And then I work at a preschool, which is like 3 houses down from us. I just can't believe my life. We like walk to school and walk to the grocery store. This is just the best little town. So working there with the kids fills up my like both my art bucket and my art therapist bucket.
Yeah.
I spend time just like introducing the little kids to different art materials and just letting them play. It's like basically just process oriented play for kids. And then also holding space for any emotions or confrontations or kids who are having a hard time transitioning. Spend a little time seeing individual clients, so really digging into the art therapist self. And then come home and dig into the mom of like, okay, get my kids from school, figure out what everyone's eating, which is just like a constant brain wiggle. And getting to like engage and like really be with my kids at home. And then nighttime is like, who knows what I need? Maybe I want to do some art. Maybe I want to sit on, a lot of times me and my husband will just sit on the front porch and like see what the world is doing around us.
Out there?
It's like, oh, there's fireflies. Oh, look, a neighbor's coming by. Yeah. So really taking the time, even though I have this like sort of schedule every day, taking the time to like be present and still give myself that wiggle room in my day of like what feels good right now.
I remember when I had like just moved to Nashville, I called you because I think I was like, what am I doing?
Yes, I remember that.
Yeah, and what you're saying now reminds me a lot of the conversation we had then when like you explained self-care to me as like you have all of these tools in your toolbox, and it's like not that you do all of them every day. It's like listening moment to moment, like which tool do I need right now? And like maybe self-care one day looks like going on a run or unrolling your mat, or maybe it's like, I remember you said like peeling an orange.
Yeah.
And like literally to this day, every time I peel an orange, I'm like, oh my gosh, like you can be so mindful with this and like nourish your body, nourish your senses. And I think that really like shines in how you're navigating now is like dropping into like it's always going to be a little different, like which thing is going to bring me joy today versus like the I must do. And I know I get in my head a lot like I need to do X, Y, and Z to feel good. And if I don't do these like things, then I won't feel good, but then I get so stressed about doing the things.
I know. It's
that
like this isn't caring for myself. Yeah, I feel that really hard. And I notice myself like shifting into that sometimes when I like I don't know, things are out of control and I'm just like extra anxious or something, and I'm like, no, I have to run this many times every week. And then I'm like, wait a second, who's saying that?
Yeah.
Like, why do I think that? I get to choose what I want to do, and as long as it feels healing, like it can look like anything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think I really love what we're like diving into today with like the many parts of you, because I feel like I've probably said this before, but like the worst advice I've was ever given, and I feel like I've been given this advice more than any other advice I've been given, is like pick one thing and stick to it. And I think that's put like this rhetoric in my head that like, oh, something's wrong with me if I like want to explore this other part of myself, or maybe if I'm like letting go of this thing or that or the other. So I just am so grateful that you're like letting yourself dive into all those parts and how you're finding balance in that. And I guess like something I'm forever curious about, and I think you might have like used this line, is like, how do you like have your hands in a lot of pots, but like you make sure it's fulfilling and important, and like all of those pots are also nourishing you back.
Yeah, I think that, that's like the question, especially with, I don't think everyone feels like this, but I feel like this. Like
Yeah.
how can I be like a full version of myself if I'm not leaning into these like many multifaceted ways that I want to be living? And for a while, it was just like, I want to do everything. I don't have the energy or like the time or all of that stuff to do it all. So it has been a lot of work around creating boundaries around my time. And especially because a lot of these things are, like helping, like caring roles, taking care of other people. Like I find so much joy in that, and it is so tiring and can be very draining. So it's really easy to be in a role like that and just keep giving until you're just like, oh my God, who am I anymore? Like I'm just giving. So that boundary work I think is essential around like, okay, let's look at my life and see like, what am I needing a little bit more of, or what am I like, what is draining me? What feels good for me right now? And honestly, I'm kind of constantly doing that. And when I have a chance to make a change, it's harder when it's, like work related and it's like, this is your role that you're expected to do. But then I can start having conversations with my people around me who are supporting me in that role and saying like, I'm feeling really like this isn't a great role for me to continue in. How can we shift and change this so that I can show up and like be utilized in the best way, Yeah, when I started at the preschool, I pretty quickly, I started as a teacher, and pretty quickly they were like, oh wow, you have a lot of skills with like this particular like social emotional growth of like a young preschool. So pretty quickly I helped with the directing, and that was so fun, and I felt so good after all these years being at home doing hard work with my kids. But like it was nice to use my brain in this different way, but I was doing it way too much, and I almost didn't notice because I was just so excited to be like, oh yay, this part of myself is really getting to shine. But then I just was tired, and I was starting to just not feel fully present in other areas of my life. And so that was sort of like my sign of just like, oh, this is a boundary thing. I need to figure out how I can support over there and still like really support here at home too. Because, my family, it's like, that's what it's all about. And I want to, change the world and do all the other stuff.
All of it,
But like, this is what it's all about. So it's cool just like having those conversations, being open and honest, noticing when I'm feeling like drained and trying to figure out where that's stemming from, and seeing what aspects of like that particular piece of me, like art therapist piece of me, what aspects are feeling heavy and which ones I'm feeling like enlivened by.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It sounds like just like you said, a lot of that like reflective listening. And I love the sign of like when I'm feeling not present in the areas of my life, because I think that's like such a real thing. And I like that it's not like, okay, now I just need to like cut it out completely and never do it again, because it can be something that fulfills like a part of you that wants voice and wants to like be utilized. And like it's holding that boundary. And it's like you, I think, have always been so good at communicating those things. And communicating boundaries is hard.
Yeah, it's super hard.
Yeah.
I think also I have like strengthened that muscle a lot, you know, like I was not always great about it. And then lots of therapy and lots of support and lots of like surrounding myself with supportive people who did want me to like be showing up as my best self. I mean, I just am so lucky, you know, to have that type of support around me in a lot of different areas of my life where I can communicate like, ooh, this is too much. And people are like, okay, let's figure this out together. Yeah.
What was some of the work that you did in like learning how to communicate those boundaries? Like definitely having people in your life, but I think the way you communicate helps people like receive it so well too.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like it's a mixture of a lot of things.
Yeah.
The theme of the day. Lots of things. But having training just, so I went to, kind of like backtracking again to like college. I majored in art, minored in psych, and then kind of synchronistically, my mom's friend just emailed me and was like, have you heard about art therapy? Look at this cool program. And I applied only to that and got into Naropa's transpersonal counseling psych program with like a degree, with a concentration in art therapy. So I think that training in particular was, you know, just so beneficial because it was all about like how to be with people, but really the best way to be with people and the most effective way to do that is to know how to be with yourself. So it's, I mean, you know, therapy was required. Meditation was like a core part of the curriculum. That helped me a lot to just get to know myself and to get to know not only like how my thoughts work, but like my responses to when things come up and like my somatic sensations to different emotions. So I just spent, you know, a lot of time digging into that. And on top of that, you know, in my own therapy, working with great people who helped support me through huge transitions in my life. Because, I was in that program when I got married, which is a really big identity shift. And then when I started having kids, which is another really big identity shift. So I think just learning, I was kind of forced to figure out how to create boundaries, and having people who were like, here are some guidelines and some ways that you can do it in an effective way was just, I just got lucky like that.
Well, I mean, lucky, and you did the work. Like it was a lot of like therapy and introspection, and like that to me, I think is like, I'm a huge advocate of like, yes, therapy is good when things are coming up, but I think therapy is like a good constant, always checking in.
Yeah,
like,
for sure.
Because little things come up all the time, and it's like if we don't drop in and like have a, you know, there's a lot of ways you can create a concentrated space to do that reflection, but having like someone who's going to hold you accountable and help you talk through things and give you those tools that you need, I think is such a powerful gift you can give yourself.
Yeah, for sure. It is, you know, I feel like lucky is also like a funny way of saying like I've been super intentional in like creating this life based on what things I have dug into and what things I have let go of, and like the people that I've kind of pulled in and decided to do this life journey with.
So before we were talking about like therapy and how that has helped you to kind of get to know yourself more deeply, learn tools to establish boundaries, would you mind holding space for a little bit to talk about like what exactly art therapy is? I feel like it's definitely a buzzword these days that has some misconceptions around it.
Yes. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so art therapy basically, I mean, there's so many ways you could go about it, but basically you can see an art therapist for any reason that you would see just like a talk therapist for. With an art therapist, you have the bonus of art materials to either like create a whole new level of communicating, or to dive into symbols, or to just like establish relationship. Basically, art is another tool that I use as a therapist to connect and to kind of like sublimate that internal world of my clients out into an external place. So instead of, seeing a talk therapist and talking through things, which is also really supportive, I have seen talk therapists in the past. You also like have a thing to look at, like a tangible thing that you create and then look at with someone else and kind of pull meaning and symbols and work through challenges that come up with the process. So in the moment, you're working through these kind of like patterns that you might hold in a real world situation. And it's super different, working with adults, working with teens, working with kids. And right now I'm focused on little ones. I see kids, elementary and younger mostly, with a lot of like 4, 5, 6-year-olds. So yeah, it's just such a great tool, especially for kids, because, with kids, it's about nurturing and like diving into that creative process that they're so in tune with already. Whereas with adults, it's almost like reminding a lot
bringing
of adults.
them back to that.
Yes, about like, oh, your creativity inside, and like, which I think is super tied to your intuition. Like that is there and that is important. So yeah, it's just every client is different, even if they're the exact same age going through the exact same thing. We're using different materials to pull out different ways of working and wiggling and shifting their life experience.
I've definitely a lot heard the term like therapeutic art versus art therapy. Like for me, I know I've often like without the work of a therapist, like used art as a form of healing for myself. Is that more along the lines of like therapeutic art versus art therapy? And like, does art therapy come in more with like, there's been a trained professional in that specific thing?
Yeah, exactly. And every state's different, but they're trying to make it universal federally. Who knows how long that will take. Yeah. But yeah, so honestly, the way that I view art is that art, is innately healing. Just art. Doing art is therapeutic. So I would say, yes, that is like why that term has kind of surfaced, which I love because it means like people are being more open to doing art, and like even those like color by number things, like at least they are creating, and like letting themselves go to that space. Art therapy specifically is when you are doing, a session with an art therapist who's been trained. In Virginia, they are close to passing, and well, I think they've passed it now. Yeah, you're working on that.
Yeah, it's a process.
Yeah,
it's a minute. Yeah, but a lot of like the terms that they deal with get pretty finicky, and in that, so I'm on the board for Art Therapists of Virginia, and a lot of our conversations have been around like people get upset if the word art therapy is used outside of having that like license to do it.
Yeah, the bummer about it is that like, art therapists who have gone through, like intense training, master's programs or beyond, are the best ones to support someone who wants, therapeutic support and healing. They know all the things. And it can be, even dangerous to see someone who says they're doing art therapy, but they just think that art is healing. And that is great too.
Yeah.
But they don't have someone who is like guiding them, like supporting them, giving them some like psychoeducational tools. Like it's not the same.
Yeah.
And I have a hard time with that too, because I want to embrace like, yes, art is healing, and I want people to be doing art in community together. And if you need support, see an art therapist who has the training.
Yeah. And it makes like a huge difference when you're working with people that have the ability to scaffold you in that supportive way.
Mm-hmm.
And they've had that support themselves to be able to like resource themselves to then help people in those spaces.
Exactly. Yeah, and I think that is the bummer thing about it is like if a lot of people are saying that they're doing art therapy, but they aren't, you know, licensed or have the background that they need to, you know, be doing it successfully, then that kind of drags down the whole field, you know? Like you have to be a professional in a field. And it's funny because art, you know, is so easily pushed aside as like a side thing or like not as important, a more feminine field maybe. And so there is this feeling, you know, internally for art therapists too, at least for myself and some people that I know, of just like wanting to be like, look, we are like a very valid profession. And so I think that's where it gets wiggly with the like therapeutic art therapist lingo.
Yeah. And that holding the balance of like, yes, we want people to like use the arts for healing. So cool that people are into that. And like there is a delineation here of like, if you want to deepen and heal in a specific
therapeutic way, for sure.
There's that resource here for you.
Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, that's the cool thing about integrating therapeutic support into this preschool where I work because, like, I mean, people up until recently, I feel like, viewed therapy as like, oh, you go if you're like crazy or if something like is seriously going wrong. But that, you know, that shouldn't be the case. I wish everybody could see a therapist.
Yes.
But, you know, there's all types of things around it, you know, with like pricing and all the other stuff. But yeah, my goal is just like integrating mental health support as like a baseline, you know, like from the time that you enter school or enter a supportive environment that like it's normalized. Which is cool to do. You know, working in a preschool, the kids are just like, oh, I get to spend time with Miss Kelsey. Like, we get to do art together. Like, if I come in and, like, am checking on a few kids, they are hoping that it's them. You know, it's not, like, something that they're scared of. Like, someone offering help and support isn't a scary thing, you know?
That's such a powerful thing. And, like, when we, like you were saying earlier, like kids with art, like they're like more intuitive into it and like they can lean into it and there's more joy and they're more receptive to these things like art and therapy. But as we get older, like society and culture and like all the things weigh down on us that kind of like close us off a little to those things.
Or just like invalidate that part of yourself. Yeah. Like this doesn't matter as much as like getting the job I should get or like being this type of grown-up person, you know? But like grown-ups can do art.
Yes.
It's way better if you feel like you can do whatever you want to do, you know?
And it reminds me of what you were saying about before of like letting that be a part of your whole self. Like I think art is like, it's in everything. People just don't always like, we tell ourselves this lie like, oh, I'm not creative or I'm not artistic, but often it's like, well, there's like just a part of your brain that we haven't like tapped into that muscle. Maybe some people have like a stronger inclination there, but we can all tap into it if we like open up and like give yourself that space. It's kind of like with yoga, one of the most common people say, they're like, oh, I can't do yoga, I'm not flexible.
I can't touch my toes.
It's like,
that's like the main thing people say.
Yes. And it's like, well, like, yeah, it's not just about touching your toes. And also, like, a way you can work towards that is practicing. Like, we don't just do what we're good at. Like, you get good at things by showing up for it. And you can, like, create new neural pathways and, like, open up parts of yourself in your brain by exploring new things. So there's, like, so many other parts of you can figure out through that medium.
It's so true. And, you know, like, getting good at something often means that you have like built confidence around it, that you've like spent time like with the muscle memory parts of like doing this certain thing. So like reflecting and checking in on yourself, like learning, growing, like getting good at something, like anybody can spend time just like getting to know this part of themselves, you know, to like grow in whatever way you really want to grow.
And I think that's one of like the greatest gifts we get that we like don't remember a lot, is that like you get to like become friends with yourself and know who you are. And like Jada gave me this birthday wish this year that's like really stuck with me, and it's like, I hope that you get to find out so many parts of yourself that you don't even know yet. And I think we get like stuck in our heads that like, oh, like I'm this old, I should have these things and know this stuff about myself by this point. But like, how fun to like learn all the new parts of yourself that are gonna just keep unfolding. And if you don't hold space to open new doors, like how can that unfold?
Exactly. And I think, that's, people thought for a long time, kind of the narrative was there is this one path that you go on, like starting from such a young age, asking a kid, what do you want to be when you grow up? Just like, what box do you want to fit in when you grow up, almost? And just, I'm feeling hopeful. At least I feel like maybe there's a shift where people are realizing like, oh, my life, like I get to choose what I do, and like it can be a path, and that path might be windy and spurred out, or it may be more like a river that's like going a lot of ways at once, like it can look like whatever I want it to, but it can, it's hard to get to that headspace, especially with the, pressures and expectations, and just honestly getting past those pressures and expectations in your own self.
Yes.
Yeah, I feel that sometimes too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I feel like it reminds me, like, oh, that is a big thing, but I think a small thing that you mentioned doing every day that we talked about earlier is like every day we make tons of little choices. And like if you start changing those small choices in your day to day and recognizing your agency and your capacity to choose, and like, oh, maybe I give myself like 5 more minutes of just like playfulness today. Like that can have a big ripple effect in the unfolding of your life. Like it doesn't have to be tomorrow I'm gonna quit my job and like do this whole other thing. It can be like, yeah, like tomorrow I'm gonna like pick up some paint and just like see what happens for the next hour.
Yep. Or even like tomorrow I'm gonna like open an orange really mindfully.
Yes.
It can be like so little or so big. Just like the way that you show up and are present in your life is just like you have so many choices of what to do. It's like, what will you choose today? Some days I just want to be like, okay, well, I'm gonna just lay in my bed tonight and like watch a show mindlessly. And like that gets to be a choice too, like not to feel bad about anything at any moment, but just to like, keep those doors open for constantly growing and learning. Yeah, I recently had like an exciting addition to my life of, I talked about these different aspects of like, oh, mothering is super important for me and art therapy is super important. And then another piece of like that mothering tangent was we were some of the younger people in our community or group of friends to have kids. And so when my friends started having kids, they would come to me and like ask questions and just like ask about my experience. And I, gained a lot of just wisdom from my own experience and doing it 3 times. So I loved that piece of, especially when we were in Boulder, like that was such a big piece for me of just like being this supportive person for women in my community who are going through these big transitions. And then I felt like that was a piece that I had to like kind of say goodbye to for a little bit when we moved to Virginia, because I was new. We didn't know anyone. It was COVID. Like our community took a little while to build. But recently my friend who is a doula asked me if I had ever considered like being a doula, and she was like, I'm looking for a partner. And I was like, oh my God, I have always wanted to be a doula, but I sort of closed myself off. Like, no, I can't do everything. Kelsey, you can't do everything. Like I was at a point then where it was like, this doesn't make sense. I have tiny kids. Like I can't just leave at any moment, and support another woman. But now I've reached this place where it's like, oh, this new door is opening and I can like tap into this part of my identity too. So yeah, super excited. I'm like going to join her and get into that a little bit slowly so that I don't overwhelm myself.
That's huge, though.
Yeah.
So what exactly, like, I know the terms doula and midwife, but what exactly does that mean?
So midwives are basically equal to the OBGYN.
Okay,
who's
got it.
at a birth. Yeah, they have most of them are certified nurse. A lot of certified nurse midwives are who you would go to for a birth. So they've like been through all the training and stuff, the sciencey stuff. And then a doula is just like an emotional support person for birth. So still done a lot of like training around just like the body and physiologically what's happening, but also a lot of like emotionally what's happening and how to support someone while they're going through this big, really just like the birth transition.
Yeah.
So they're on call. They will like show up when you're in early labor to support with that, get things ready, and honestly mostly support the partner in supporting their wife who's having a baby. So it felt, that's why it just felt so natural for me, because I'm like, oh, I'm so passionate about birth, and I am so passionate about like taking care of people and helping them see life as like this full journey of like just goodness and love. And so like birth, becoming a support for birth just feels really aligned.
Yeah, well, like there's the side where you can be like, oh, I can't do everything. But to me, that sounds like really integrated into all the parts that are already a part of you. And it's just another outlet that you can explore and like share your gifts in that way.
Yeah. And really like the reason that I feel like the time has come now is because I have gotten pretty clear about my boundaries around my time right now. Moving forward, it's like the preschool, my schedule is feeling really good for next year. My like individual clients, I feel really good about like how that's all flowing, and like my time at home feels really good. So just like popping a few little baby births in here and there feels really great. And also it like selfishly is a way that I can have my friends or family members having a baby, and I can be like, can I support you? Can I be
you're
there?
so good at that. You're so good at the support. And like something you've helped me with a lot is like support in those transitions.
Yeah. Oh,
and
love that.
like what a gift to have you in that space.
Yeah. Oh man, I love transitions. Yes.
Yeah. Do you mind talking a little bit about how, like you said, you worked through that like through therapy during your time? It's something you've helped me with. Like, how do you honor and navigate transition?
Yeah, I think that, it's just pulling so many pieces of myself in. But I have always loved transitions and like transitional times, because I feel like it is a time for someone to really like spend time digging deep and reflecting on what really is at my core, and what do I want to keep, and what do I want to shed, and how do I want to grow and integrate as I move into this kind of new phase. I feel like as a, culture and society, we have kind of glazed over transitions, yes, it's like, congratulations, something's happening, but there's so much other stuff happening. I sort of like explain it to people when I'm, pitching the idea of supporting them around transitions, of like at any like big light event, like a wedding, this like huge light is shining. But there's an equally big shadow that oftentimes gets overlooked or just ignored or kind of stuffed down. So that's where you get, bridezillas who are just like trying to control, because like I have all these feelings inside and I don't know like what to do. So if I control, then maybe I can move through this in one piece.
Yeah.
But if instead you create a space where this person can share like what's going on and be vulnerable and like be supported, and no one even has to tell her, like don't tell that person what to do, just be there with them while they're feeling it. Oftentimes just voicing it helps create a shift internally, and allows this like full growth process to happen, instead of just like kind of popping like, oh, now I'm here. Ooh, okay, now I'm here. You know,
Yeah.
it's more of a journey. So I really love doing blessings for people. I did Holly's bridal blessing.
Which was so special. And like for me, since I came out, like I was an emergency C-section baby because I did not want to come out. Like I have never been great with the transition.
Mm-hmm.
Like kindergarten, I cried every single day of kindergarten for like months and months. I almost had to drop out of it because I was like, wait, this is too much change.
Mm-hmm.
And I think when you like, because I like was and like still in the first year of marriage, like feeling, processing a lot. I really like to go deep about everything all the time. So like I feel it all really deeply. And like you said, like for every light, there's like an equal shadow.
Mm-hmm.
And when we don't give that shadow voice, it just like builds and you feel like, oh, is there something wrong that this shadow is here? But also like the shadow is just part of the wholeness sometimes.
Yeah. Oh man, it's so true. Yeah, I was listening to this podcast. Man, it was Brene Brown was interviewing Susan Cain. I wish I knew her name, but she wrote a book called Bittersweet, and she was talking about how like life isn't like if you have a negative thing happen, you know, or like an intense thing happen, it's not a deviation from the path of life. Like that is part of life, is just like the heaviness and the lightness. And if we honor that and like find beauty in those dark times and find like a little bit of bittersweet, like, you know, being aware of the impermanence of the good times, like life just feels so much more fluid and full. So yeah, I feel like it's so important for me, and I'm a huge advocate for just like women coming together. So for me, I love honoring women as they go through this transition into marriage, and then also transition into motherhood, doing like mother blessings.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I did one for my mom when she had to have like a medical procedure too with her group of friends, and it was such a beautiful thing. I feel like anytime there's a big transition, if we honor it and hold space for it, then it just makes it feel so much more, I don't know, full and fluid to be able to move through.
Yeah, well, I think it's another example of like taking the walls of the box down and like inviting all of the parts into it. But it's like those transitions we try to put in a box is like, this is a happy one. Oh, this is a sad one. But you know, even if there's like a really hard thing that happens in your life, like maybe you still feel joy in your life too, and like that's okay.
Yeah.
And I think having that space to like honor the like tension that you're feeling in your head, maybe the complexity that society is telling you, you're just honoring space for people to like welcome the wholeness and like drop the walls down.
Yeah, that's so true. That's cool. I've never thought about like that piece in parallel universe with my my multi thing.
Well, I feel like your multi things are like very integrated at their core. It's like coming to this healing and this wholeness
and like interconnection of
Yeah.
like yourself and each other. Yeah, it feels important.
It's definitely important.
Yeah.
You earlier said that you think art is related a lot to intuition. What has that like been like for you? How has that like guided you following your intuition? How do you tap into that and like, I don't want to say like analyze it, but like use it to discern?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a really good question. You know, I think you can tell when you're creating something, and it doesn't have to be like visual art. It can be anything that a person does when they're in this like flow, kind of creative, fluid space, where you just feel connected and like a release is happening. And I just have a lot of practice of doing that with art, but I also see it in my clients too. Like, yeah, if you allow yourself to, you know, be creative, let this release happen. Like, let yourself pick up a pencil and see what happens without allowing that like critic in your head to be like, what's going on? What are you doing? Why'd you draw that square? If you can get to that place, then it's such a good way. I mean, it's such a good way to get to know yourself better and to trust yourself better, to just, be integrated. And I see it all the time in art therapy. You know, you don't have to like do art a lot to get to this place. People come and see me, and the first like 4 sessions, I just like have no idea what's going to happen. But naturally, these kids start doing what they need to be doing to heal. They'll be playing out, you know, scenes of something that happened in sort of like a weird separate universe type of way. But they're playing out, you know, this feeling of abandonment or this feeling of like fear or perfectionism. And if you just let them play it out, you know, using watercolors, which is a super fluid material, and like let it flow off the paper, let it like get a little bit of red in the blue area that they wanted, and sit with them as it's happening and flow through that, you can get to like a new beautiful place and like develop tools along the way to get there. So I think all of us, anytime we create, anytime we can get into that space of just touching in on that like little soul person inside of us, it's just really good practice for developing your intuition and trusting it. If you can trust yourself to like sit down with a blank piece of paper and create something, who knows what it will be, but like create something, that's going to be what you need for that day, you know?
Yeah. There's so many things happening there. Like, just like you said, that trust and like tapping into your agency to create something. And I feel like a lot of that process sounds like kind of like stepping outside of the box of the critic that's in your head. And when you do that, like letting this other part of, like almost like a subconscious part of you kind of speaks and comes out, and then you can look back and reflect at that.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why it's easier, you know, in a way, working with kids in art therapy, because they just know what to do.
Yeah.
And I am there to like guide them and support them and like process it with their parents. But yeah, adults, it's a little bit more of like allowing them to get to that space of trusting themselves and releasing that critic, releasing, whatever it is that holds them back from like trusting that intuition inside. Yeah.
How do we hold on to that more? Like this is maybe a big question, but like I feel like you would have thought of, you knowing you, I feel like you are intentional about this. But like, how do you think about that in raising your girls, like to maintain that like intuitive nature that's in us as a child, that part that like knows? How do we hold on to that in our young ones so that it doesn't get so weighed down and you do that rework later? Like,
yeah, I know, it's so hard. And it's so hard because I am not the only person in their life helping to shape them. You know, when they're so tiny, it's like I can do anything I want to like keep them safe and connected. But I think it's just honestly what we've been talking about a lot now that my kids they're still little. I have a 3 and a 5 and a 6-year-old, but now that my older 2 are like entering that more social zone of like friend problems coming up, we do a lot of just talking about like trusting their heart and like if a situation is happening to like check in with their heart and see if it feels right for them or if it doesn't feel right for them, or if someone says something that makes them feel sad, checking in with their heart and knowing that like they are loved and they are important, which is kind of how I had to shift. You know, earlier it could be like if I got mad at them and we had like a rupture of some sort, like we could repair right there. And it was just me. We we trust each other. We have like a relationship. But when I am like an external part of it and they're having these things happen in their worlds, that's been my technique. And I have no idea what I'm doing. I'm just, trying and practicing. And but that's where we've been landing, is just like kind of digging into like, what is the right thing for you, and it's going to be different for you and your sister and your other sister. Like, we're all different.
I think that's so beautiful in that you're just really empowering them within themselves and like teaching them early on that like checking in and that self-reflection, and you're giving them agency.
Yeah.
Instead of being like, oh, here's what you do in this scenario. And like
Yeah.
all of you three should do the same. You're like, well, what feels right for you? And like that, I think, is the most of what I'm trying to relearn right now is like, okay, wait, what does feel right for me? Like, how can I take aligned action in that? Because I get in habits of being like, oh, well, you're doing this. So like, sure, I can go ahead and do that. Or like, you think that's right, I'll do this.
Yeah, for sure. And it's hard. And I also tell myself, you know, like, I'm like, well, my kids will like go to therapy too, and like I'm not going to do everything perfectly, you know, like they will be able to come back to this. I know I handled today not that well, you know, like things like that. But it is, I mean, it's just so, it's so cool to watch them grow. I was like really, one of my kids was kind of like annoying me one day, and I was trying to get them to stop like yelling or something, and she yelled back at me, and she was just like, Mom, I'm allowed to be angry, okay? And I was like,
touche.
Yes, girl, okay. You are correct. I will leave you to be angry. And I'm so glad that you reminded me of that, because, you know, that's something that, like, I'm still working on. Like, how do I be angry and stay in connection? You know, that's a tricky one.
Yeah, that's a super powerful one.
Yeah.
And the work that you're doing at the preschool, I think this is something too, like holding space for kids early on to go to therapy and explore these things, and like taking away the stigma around these things from an early age is going to like open so many doors for them down the line to continue their own spaces for self-reflection and healing.
That's the hope. I think it is being planted, being watered and nourished.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for inviting us into your home, and you're like, I feel like you're the image I have in my head, because I feel like we've been talking about boxes a lot, is like your life is like, yeah, there's this box. I'm going to like put colors inside of it and burst out of it and like maybe take this wall down and like add this one on top.
Yes, which is also such a funny metaphor for like the house that we created too, because we've done a lot of taking walls down and putting color up.
I love it. Well, how can people support you and the work that you do and the things that you advocate for? Is there a way people can like stay connected with you, or is there something that you want to advocate for that we haven't already talked about?
Oh, I think, we mentioned you can follow our Purple House on Instagram.
It's really fun.
It's mostly fun. Yeah, that's less of the like therapeutic work, but super fun if you like colors and always coming up with new spontaneous ideas. And then on top of that, I think just like advocating in your local community for any caregivers, you know, whether it's women, mothers who are home, people in education. It's such an underrepresented, you know, field that's just not getting the support and money that it deserves for like all of the hard work that people are putting into those positions. So that, and then like if you can, go to therapy and see what happens.
Yes.
Just like reflect on yourself. If you don't want to go to therapy, you should. But if you don't want to, you can always just see what you can do to like reflect on your life. Like, what is bringing you joy? What is weighing you down? And how can you allow yourself to release and to grow?
I love that. That's like such a small thing that we can all do today, is just like that moment to pause and reflect on those spaces within us.
Yes.
Thank you so much,
Thank
Kelsey.
you. It was an honor. I'm so happy to be with you.
I'm so happy to be with you.
Everybody's learning. Everybody's growing. Everybody's got to start somewhere. How the wise one grows. How the wise one grows.
Thank you for taking time to listen to the wise one inside of you today. Please rate, review, and subscribe to this podcast to help it grow. Until the next time, let's keep taking it one breath at a time.